Hey everyone, Kevin here, and thanks for watching this video in our Bottom Line series, where we focus on everything about lower trucks. And if you don't know or aren't familiar with me, I've contributed to or worked on all the major magazine titles and even ran one at one point. And I've been doing this for about 20 years, since the early 2000s basically. And I've seen trends come and go. So when I thought about what I should cover in my next video, I thought it'd be interesting to take a look at a couple trends that are no longer popular. Now with that being said, if I've listed something in here that you don't agree with, or you have a vehicle that has one of these trends in them and you feel pride in it, don't be ashamed of it. Take pride in your vehicle. If you like it, that's good enough. I'm just here, just to point out what basically the popular, what's popular and what's not, basically. So with that being said, let's take a look at my top 5 dead lower truck trends. Now, I don't have too much experience with old truck tweed interiors, but from what I've gathered, it was popular in the 80s and 90s, and was on a lot of custom vehicles, and it was kind of a little bit of an economical way of adding a custom interior to your vehicle. So there was a couple of benefits to this fabric, including that it was economical, and then as well as it was easy to form. So you could lay this stuff down on anything and it would form without getting wrinkles or anything like that. So it would lay down pretty nice and everything. Another added benefit to it as well is that it breathes a little bit, or lets your skin breathe. So if you have a seat that's covered in tweed on a hot day, your back would breathe a bit. When it's sweat, you wouldn't get as sweaty as you do with leather or vinyl interiors. So there's lots of benefits of it, as well as being able to customize it. You can do so many things with it, put shapes on it, put designs on it, and all that. I can see why a lot of people used tweed in the past. As things progressed, guys wanted to mimic more luxurious interiors like they would find on sports cars or high-end vehicles. So they started using other materials. Leather, was the top material. Even very high-grade leather some people would use. There were still ways to be economical, and some people would use vinyl. Which you really can't tell too much of a difference. I can see a benefit of still using tweed, and what I've seen in the past is that people use it as an insert, so that where they sit, it still breathes, but then they have a lot of leather, but that insert with that tweed helps their back breathe so they don't sweat as much. But I think things have really progressed from there, and still people aren't using tweed because there's other methods of having custom interiors. Guys are finding unique fabrics and patterns that they can use that can match their vehicle. And better yet, what really sets people off these days is finding new old stock vintage fabric, that might be original from a car or something like that, that really, matches maybe a classic style of some kind, that could be really interesting for a theme. And it has all those benefits as well. So as you can see, we've moved on from tweed, and basically it's just not used anymore. This trend goes back to the old school mini truck days when adjustable suspensions were not the norm, and basically the technology just didn't exist or wasn't easy to get a hold of. So if you wanted your truck to look a little bit lower or add some flair to it, this is what you would do. Though mini truck body kits are no longer popular, they were all the rage when wild paint jobs were out and static drops were pretty much the top of the mark. Body kits were so hot that even automakers were trying to cash in on all the action by offering kits on vehicles that were sold at dealers. And most notably would be the Chevrolet S10 and Blazer, the extreme package of those, which had a body kit on it. Boy, did I want one of these things. These trucks were bad back in the day. Straight out the box, you had some style. However, I am so glad I didn't get one of these trucks because they ended up being dated really quick. It just kind of showed that time, and it kind of got stuck in that era. And so as things progressed with truck builds, and fabricators were using adjustable suspensions and getting trucks lower, they kind of felt that body kits were in the way and didn't show how low a vehicle was. And if not that, then they felt that if you had a body kit on a truck that was low, that you were kind of cheating and just making it appear lower than it actually was. Now things did get pretty wild with some of these kits. One of them would be the Trucksterosa kit, which basically added Ferrari Testarossa styling to a vehicle. They can actually look really good. I've seen a couple of these builds where the kit was done right, the paint job was done right, the theme, everything was done completely right, and yeah, it could look good. But the general consensus these days is that body kits are no longer popular, and I think that's because what guys are doing nowadays is they're just really appreciating the original style of trucks and just accentuating that maybe a little bit, some clean paint work and stuff like that. And really what people are going after is making their vehicles a little bit more timeless so they can appreciate them a lot more longer. Now this is a subject we touched on in a previous video called Hydraulics versus Air Ride. It was pretty interesting, so if you guys want to take a look at that one, we'll drop the link to that below. To sum things up, adjustable suspension systems really came from lowriders. What these guys were trying to do is they kept going lower and lower and lower with their vehicles. They kind of figured out if they had something that was adjustable, they could slam their vehicle when it was parked and then raise it up to drive it and go over bumps and everything. Now truck guys had a different approach when it came to adjustable suspensions and ended up using airbags as they thought it had a smoother ride and everything, and them too, they kind of discovered that if they hadn't had the right equipment, they can do it right, that they could hop their vehicle. What I can tell you is that with Air Ride, I think it's a little bit harder to hop. You need a lot of pressure to be able to do it, and you need basically good equipment. You need good airbags as well. So this kind of changed with the times too. People started designing suspension systems a little bit differently for that, so they can get their vehicle up in the air. And another problem they had is that having a steady air supply. Now, we generally use compressors with tanks to have a reserve of air, and that's only for so much. If you're hopping a truck up and down, you're going to need a lot of air because it's going inside the bag, out of the bag, and just constantly you're going through that air. So what guys were doing back in the day was they were actually getting commercial CO2 tanks or nitrogen tanks and putting them in the back of their truck, so they had a steady airflow so they can hop for a few minutes at a time. Well, if there's a will, there's a way, and guys definitely figured out how to get a truck hopping and everything. And this was a big thing for a number of years in the early 2000s. At events, there would be truck hopping contests where huge crowds would gather to see this feat and see all the action and everything. I can tell you, I mean, I've witnessed a few of them, and it's pretty thrilling to watch these things. But at the same time, these vehicles were also built solely for hopping. They were not daily drivers. They do not make good for driving. They're not. They're set up for hopping. There's so much leverage that they have. It'd probably bounce all over the place if you drove one of these things. And you definitely don't want to hop your daily driver, because I'll tell you what, when you're hopping these things, a truck slamming on the ground and doing it over and over again repeatedly, it can destroy a vehicle. That just wasn't happening, and you pretty much just had to have a dedicated hopping vehicle to be a part of these contests. And it slowly that went away, and people realized the destruction that it was doing. And I think as with time, people started appreciating their vehicles more and their builds, and they stopped doing this unless people started to to hop, and it just basically went out of style. Somewhere along the lines, somebody must have by accident or been brave enough to air out their truck while driving and found out that they could put a good show by doing this and throw sparks and everything. But as a few people got wise to this, they caught on to the fact that with some prep work and everything, you could do the same and just be pretty much badass on the streets by putting on a good show and everything. So yeah, and also at the same time, it was kind of like a middle finger to conformity, which is really what customizing is all about, is like going against the grain and being your own individual and having a representation of that. So I think the first reaction from anyone that has never seen a truck drag before and sees it for the first time, they usually say, doesn't that ruin your truck? And really, to be honest, it does. And yes, I will say that there are ways to prep a vehicle that can minimize the damage and everything. And that's what a lot of guys did. One problem I can tell you is that, in some vehicles, gas tanks hang below the frame rails. And if you're dragging your truck, you're dragging your gas tank, you could rip a hole in it. You could be stranded because you don't have any gas. And other times I've seen this cause a fire and seen trucks burn down to the ground. Other things that guys would do is that they would weld on 1/4-inch plates underneath the frame rail, so that would minimize the damage too. But along the lines, things got a little bit silly when guys started to attach tow balls, for towing, and they would just put it underneath so that they had a bunch of metal that they can drag. So yeah, things started to get a little bit silly for a time there. I think the height of this was in the mid-2000s when an annual show called Showfest was happening in Greenville, Mississippi. What I liked about this show was that after it was over at night, everybody would crowd along the main road nearby the showgrounds and would just hang around on the sides of the streets and watch trucks cruise all night long and drag all night long. And it really popularized it because you were hanging out and watching these trucks do this feat. It was really entertaining. It was fun to be a part of and everything. And yeah, I think that's where the mantra, the drag and destroy, kind of came up and kind of was a big thing during that time. As other show promoters started to see or take notice what was going on in Greenville, they started adding truck dragging events to their shows, sanctioned areas. It really wasn't the same. When you have an open road where you can just go down and scrape your truck, it's so much different than having a little tiny spot that you could do it at. You know, you're doing it at a lower speed. It's just not the same. The sparks don't fly as much, but generally, truck dragging is not a thing anymore. And I think what happened was along the way, fabricators kept getting or kept pushing each other to go further and further with the quality. And as that happened, people just didn't want to drag their trucks anymore. They didn't want to destroy things. They appreciated it more. I'll tell you one thing is that when I got my S10 painted, I didn't drag anymore. I drug it a few times before, you know, here and there. It was set up. I have a gas tank that's up. The frame rails can drag. I can do it safely for a little bit. But once I got it painted, I didn't do it anymore because I didn't want to wreck it or ruin it anymore. And I think that's kind of what happened and why truck dragging just isn't a thing anymore. All right, now I know I'm going to get some haters on this, but it has to be said. For the most part, the mini truck style is dead. For the most part, with the general consensus, that is not popular anymore. Now I know there's going to be many of you that are going to argue this with me, but let me tell you from my experience in working in magazines and now with digital and social media, I get the numbers. I see these things and I see how popular all the truck trends are, and I can tell you mini trucks are not there anymore. And just take a look at this. I mean, we had a magazine dedicated to it called Mini Trucking Magazine, and it was gone about 6 years ago. And just basically there wasn't enough people into it buying the magazine and looking at it. They were into mini trucks anymore, and it died off. It just wasn't popular enough anymore. Now, don't shoot the messenger here. I mean, I'm just stating the facts. And to be honest, if anybody's going to be pissed off about it, it would be me. Look, I got my own S10. It's a mini truck, and I've got thousands of dollars in it. And it's just not as popular as it used to be. So like I said, if anyone would be upset about it, it would be me. So why are mini trucks not popular anymore? Well, I think there's a number of reasons, and starting with the style is older. It's not groundbreaking anymore, so it's not shocking, and it's not also old enough to be savored as classic. Another thing people can argue is that kids aren't getting into it. They're not customizing vehicles. They're not very hands-on. They're more worried about digital and social media and doing these sort of things, and they don't make economic compact trucks for these kids to get into and to start working on things, and that's how a lot of us got into it, is that these trucks were cheap and you could get into it and you could start customizing them and on a budget and everything, and it's just not the case nowadays. I mean, take a look at the Chevy Colorado, which is the replacement for the Chevy S10, and this truck is huge. It's almost as huge as a full-size truck from decades ago. Plus the cost is dramatically higher. It's a lot higher than some of the more economical rides that kids can buy these days. If automakers continue to not produce a smaller, cheaper truck for kids to get into, this could all end. But I am hopeful. I think in the future, I think things will be on the rise. There's a little bit of a rise right now that's going on. And I think what's going on here is that people are getting nostalgic about it and thinking fondly of their old days of mini trucking and everything. And I think what this will do is this will generate some more interest all around and get more people into it. And eventually prices may go up with some of the trucks as they're getting very scarce to find and everything. So that might bring some money to the table and might bring values up as well. So all of that is a good thing, I think. And so, yeah, only time will tell, and hopefully one day mini trucking will be popular again. Well, there you have it, my top 5 dead lower truck trends. Whether you agree with me or not, these are the observations that I've made over the last couple decades of trends that have come and gone, and I believe this all to be true. Now, if you have other thoughts about it, go ahead and feel free to voice your opinion in the comment section below. Ultimately, I hope you enjoyed watching this video, and if you did, hit that like button because it helps us out a bunch, and also hit the subscribe button as well and turn on post notifications, and we will catch you next time.